Hey, Slater Crusaders, we are going to lean into the George Floyd trial, which sort of started yesterday with jury selection, and the trial starts on March 29th, opening statements, and it's going to be a madhouse. It's on court TV, so it's going to be all televised, and the O.J. Simpson trial was 25 years ago, so our country is going to be watching this one intently, and we are too, because there's going to be a lot of misinformation out there, so we're going to be here to always try to reveal the truth. Where I stand on the trial right now is, if we lived in a purely objective world where you only look at the objective facts and you look at the medical report and you look at the toxicology report and you see the medical report says there was no damage to his neck and no obstruction of his airways, and you look at the toxicology report that said he had 3 times the potentially lethal dose of fentanyl in his system and meth in his system, and the medical examiner saying that he died before the neck was even, or the beginnings of him dying were started even before the knee was on his neck, and his lungs weighed 2 to 3 times the normal person's lungs because of pulmonary edema, which is a fluid in the lungs because of an overdose of fentanyl, right? When you look at the evidence, and with a second-degree murder charge, there's no way they could charge Derek Chauvin with second-degree murder. But we don't live in a purely objective world, and I don't think there's going to get an unbiased jury. And with the threat of violence, with activists, and as you saw earlier, the entire city on lockdown already, I don't know if a jury would acquit Derek Chauvin. That's where I am right now. Obviously, open mind, ready to see what happens moving forward. Zack Smith is here. He's the legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, who, of course, is following all this. Zack, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks so much for having me on, Mike.
Yeah, my pleasure. So that's my preliminary take right now. What would you add or subtract to that?
So I push back a little bit against some of the things that you said. There are 3 charges at issue in this case right now. There's the second-degree murder charge you mentioned. There's a second-degree manslaughter charge. And then the really controversial charge in this case is a third-degree depraved indifference murder charge. And that's the one that a lot of legal wrangling is happening over right now, whether or not that's an appropriate charge. The judge originally dismissed it back in October. An appellate court recently reversed him, said he needed to revisit that decision. And so far, he's kind of holding off on deciding whether or not he will reinstate that charge. But going back to your point about the second-degree murder charge, Mike, really what that second-degree murder charge is about is basically it would have to be that that the officer in this case didn't necessarily intend to cause the death of George Floyd, but that he caused George Floyd's death during the commission of another felony. And so in this case, the other felony would have to be criminal assault. And so I think the prosecution will have issues determining whether or not they can prove that Officer Chauvin in this case in fact committed criminal assault. Police officers are entitled to use reasonable force to restrain someone, reasonable force whenever someone is either actively or passively resisting arrest. And so a lot will determine whether the prosecution can show that at some point Officer Chauvin's conduct transformed from what he was allowed to do into impermissible criminal assault.
Wow. That was deep and insightful. I want more of that. Like, subscribe, get more.